want a gazillion bazillion dollars. But Joe, you're supposed to start with let's podcast. Well, I would, but yesterday I asked for Jim Phillips, ACC commissioner, to do a better job at PR. Voila. Ask and you shall receive. Today, Jim Phillips reached out to Nicole Auerbach at The Athletic, and he made some comments supporting the ACC. So it's as simple as that. All I got to do is ask for it. A bazillion, jillion. Please, pretty please, while I'm asking for things. Also, while I'm asking for things, Copiers Plus, they can help your business. They help us with our digital and print needs. They can help you in your small business. All you got to do is go to copiers-plus.com. Also, we're here in the beautiful Eford Studios in downtown Raleigh, and thanks to Empire Properties, the Raleigh Times, the Morning Times, the Pit, City, Mecca, you name it. Greg Hayden has it covered. If you're looking for somewhere to watch these games, well, go check them out. I like going upstairs at the Raleigh Times bar, but you're welcome to find your own spot. The courtyard in the city is one of my favorite places for a birthday, anniversary dinner, you name it. So check them out. And big thanks to Greg, who will be in Dallas for NC State's Sweet 16 matchup with Marquette. But let's start with the news of the day. We know OVS today, but Luke DeCock will be joining me. We'll talk a little bit about our teams in the NCAA tournament. We'll talk a little bit about the Carolina Hurricanes. Also have David McKenzie. He is an intellectual property lawyer here in the Triangle. McKenzieLaw.net. Check out. He's been following the Florida State lawsuits, the Clemson lawsuits with the ACC at a higher level than Joe and I are capable of. So I thought it was important to have a conversation with him, and you'll enjoy some of his insight, and we'll get to that. But first, with Jim Phillips, yesterday I said the ACC has a PR problem. Jim Phillips has a PR problem. He needs to reach out to some people in the national media and get his message out there and be an advocate. And lo and behold, less than 24 hours later, Jim Phillips did just that with Nicole Auerbach over at The Athletic, talking about the ACC teams and how they were treated this year and how they've performed. And one of his thoughts about the net and how to get more teams into the NCAA tournament is for the ACC to reduce their league schedule. With the advent of the net, they had gone to a 20-game schedule, thinking it was playing more league games and cutting out games out of the conference that were more of a filler, right, would help the league. Obviously, that hasn't turned out to be true. We have had other conversations with Jim Phillips about how to potentially help the league. In-season tournament would be one of them. Playing their ACC SEC challenge in February, early February, late January would be another one of them. Again, I'm here for the free ideas to help the league, because what's good for the league is good for this podcast, quite frankly. But Jim Phillips reaching out to Nicole Auerbach, and Joe is the technical one, but let me see if I can pull up these quotes from Jim. And basically it was like, hey, our league deserves better. Every time we're in this thing, we perform. But ultimately, I got to the last paragraph here, which was, again, in The Athletic, we're really, really working hard on this, i.e. how to improve at the ACC's inclusion in the NCAA tournament. We get our basketball coaches together in May, and the goal is to have a presentation for them about the road and the path forward, because we can't continue to live with what's happened the last 2 or 3 years. It's not reflective of the teams and the play that comes out of this conference. We have to fix it. We have to find a path forward that allows us greater access to the tournament. So I say congratulations to Jim Phillips. I say good move. Get on the PR offensive. That's a smart move. That's what you have to do. You can't just sit back and hope and pray and wish that people say nice things about your league. I do think it is smart to be proactive, also in the sense of, why are your teams being left out? In this year's case in particular, as I said, of who you want to be mad at, the selection committee is not the ones to be mad at. Wake Forest and Pitt, while they did some good things and while they won some of the games they needed to win, they did not, in the case of Pitt, set themselves up outside of the league with the right schedule. And in the case of Wake Forest, down the stretch, you can't lose to Notre Dame. You can't lose to Georgia Tech. If you flip those two results, Wake Forest probably has a resume that puts them in the NCAA tournament. So there's reasons along the way that I hope the ACC going to an 18-game schedule, I do think can help them. But I also think you have to look at, it's not just doing what the Big 12 did and playing bad teams out of the league and putting yourself in a position efficiency wise and net wise that you're creating quad one games and opportunities down the stretch. You still have to challenge yourself out of the league, because remember, on the flip side of Pitt is Virginia. And Virginia made the tournament because of their non-conference strength of schedule and because of the wins that they had out of the league over Florida and Texas A&M. That ultimately helped them. But I say this, good for Jim Phillips and good for him for getting out there and getting the message out there and reaching out. That's what this is about. You don't have to reach out to me, man, but you can't just sit back and, if it's raining and sit here and go, I can't believe it's just raining on me. Well, put the umbrella up, man. Do yourself a favor and protect the league. That's the best way to do it.
Housekeeping.
I'm on it today. You see that? That was a quick opening segment. I'm kind of sort of proud of myself. And you got to, just like Jim Phillips needs that umbrella, keep himself and protect himself. Man, clean your house. But you don't want to do it. You don't be cleaning toilets. You know what I hate? The blinds. I can't stand it. Or the baseboards. Who can handle all these things for you at an affordable price and at a great deal? Enovana. Check them out. It's enovana.com, right? As Joe likes to say, your time is more valuable to you than you want to be on the weekends at home cleaning up. So take it out of your hands, put it in Enovana's. Go to enovana.com and they will take care of you. So yesterday we talked about the mugs, the famous mugs. The mugs are gone, but I still have some coasters. The mugs are sold, but the ACC tournament runner-up coasters are available. I will sell these. We'll sell these for $10, $10. Okay. If you want a coaster, those are available. Just email us. It's the OG Goes Digital, or reach out to me on Twitter. It's Giglio_OG, and I will save some for you. The mugs have sold out though, so appreciate everyone for doing that. Reminder that we have a birthday party coming up on Friday, May 3rd. Friday, May 3rd, we'll be at Shady's in downtown Garner. We're going to have drinks, of course. We will be celebrating. We'll have food trucks, thanks to Adam over at the Breeze Through and the great food that they have. We'll have all sorts of goodies and other stuff to give away too. You know how we do. When we do it big, and we're going to celebrate May 3rd, our birthday. One other way you can help us and support us is go to breakingtea.com, search for the Ovius and Giglio collection. So it's Breaking Tea, just the letter.com, and search for Ovius and Giglio, and you'll see all of our different shirts, the flag, positive vibes only, and now our latest, the Dead Conference, the ode to the ACC. Yes, the map is slightly problematic. The dots are slightly problematic, but it was not meant to be, a GPS helper. It was meant to be an ode to the ACC and what it once was. So check it out. It's at breakingtea.com. You'll also see a link right below in the YouTube if you're watching us on the YouTube. So appreciate you guys for doing that. Joining me now on the Heister Automotive Group hotline is David McKenzie, and David McKenzie is an intellectual property lawyer here in the Triangle. And David, you've been following, covering, understanding better than us here at the OG, the actual legal side of the conference's legal challenges from Florida State and Clemson. And I wanted to talk to you today because Joe and I have talked a lot about this, and Joe's wife understands this. Obviously, she's an attorney and she understands these things better than we do. So we get it kind of filtered down through Kelly, right? Right. And we have a cursory understanding, but not in the depth and the knowledge that you do. So you had reached out, and I wanted to have a conversation with someone to explain this to us, because I read what you wrote on McKenzieLaw.net, and I'm like, oh, this makes a lot of sense the way that you're explaining it. So I was hoping you could do that for our audience. And basically, like, it doesn't seem to be that much of a actual legal challenge from Florida State from my, seats back here. But what does the intellectual property lawyer say?
Well, I think that's right, Joe. Thanks for having me on. I think that it's first and foremost, everybody needs to understand that the grant of rights is an intellectual property license. More
Okay.
specifically than that, it's a copyright license. And copyrights and intellectual property, whether it's trademarks, trade secrets, patents, or copyrights, is something that we can convey just like anything we can hold or sell. A bad example kind of is real property, because copyright is not something you can necessarily hold until it's actually in like a video, or what we're doing right now is a copyright. But you can transfer that for many, many years. And the reason that you can transfer it for so many years is chiefly because of the nature of how long intellectual property lasts. Copyright presumptively lasts for the duration of an author's life plus 70 years. And as I've sort of pointed out in various articles here and there, that's how Disney controlled Mickey Mouse for what seems like an eternity. It's how Elvis continues, or Elvis's family more specifically, gets to continue to profit from Elvis's royalties, despite Elvis dying in 1977. So the inherently long nature of intellectual property rights it's congruent to have long licenses. And so the grant of rights agreement, first and foremost, is a copyright license. It does have a long term. And so that's the number one thing to understand. The second thing to understand, at least from Florida State and for Clemson, is that they signed this thing.
They willingly entered this deal, is what I think the language that you were using.
They willingly entered this deal not once, but twice. As you and Avias have ably told your viewers, this happened in 2013, and then there was an amendment in 2016. Nobody was holding a gun to their head. And when you have a voluntary contract, the issue then shifts to what kind of contract offenses you may have. And in reviewing both Florida State's complaints, there's two of them. One was filed in December, and then the other one was filed in late January. Florida State in particularly, and Clemson does as well, their contract offense is ultimately a change in market conditions. Change in market condition is not a valid contract offense. It's just a change in market conditions.
Okay. Which side of this, if you were to have to be a lawyer on one side or the other, which one would you prefer if you had to take this to court? Which side would you want to be on?
Man, wow. Definitely on the ACC side. I joke, and I really do mean this. I probably have had one or two cases in my almost 2 decades of doing this that have been this fairly straightforward. I joke, it's been like finding hay in a haystack, because you're talking about two entities that were chock full of deeply sophisticated people, deeply educated people, who had attorneys at their left and right side who entered into this agreement voluntarily and have made hundreds of millions of dollars off the deal. And Florida State in particularly, their grievances were not aired until 2023, which, considering the amount of time that had passed, it indicates some sort of at least tacit endorsement, even if they didn't like it. They sat quiet for 10 years, and that's an awful long time to sit quiet until, coincidentally, the SEC and Big Ten get better deals, and then they start to voice their grievances. That's not a valid contract offense.
Does the venue matter in this? Now that I'm seeing, obviously, with Florida State in the state of Florida, then the ACC countersues, and now Clemson in the state of South Carolina and the ACC countersues, just went through a little bit of a health insurance type deals, and the way it was explained to me was like, if you were in South Carolina, we'd have a lot better case for you and your kids. Is any of that in play in these cases? Like, is one venue over the other going to help or hurt the ACC?
I think minimally. It's a little surprising to see how much conversation really is about this topic of jurisdiction and venue. Notably, the grant of rights agreement does not have a jurisdiction and venue clause. It doesn't have an interpretation clause. It's silent on those things. And so when that kind of thing happens, you really kind of look to where the nexus of the events, were at the time of the signing. And that unequivocally was North Carolina. I mean, they had multiple meetings in Greensboro. I understand that several of the presidents executed this thing in Greensboro, and then they did it again in 2016. The conference has been in North Carolina for 71 years. There's 4 schools in North Carolina. But I have to say, I don't think, and this is a little disturbing because I think that there's a lot of commentary out there that does stand for the proposition that there's such a thing as home field advantage. And it's disturbing because I guess the assumption is that, well, if we can proceed in Tallahassee and Leon County, Florida State will get a favorable ruling, or in Pickens County, South Carolina, which happens to be my home county, maybe they'll get a favorable ruling there. And that's just not how it works. Most judges, believe it or not, are incredibly fair, and they do set aside their predilections, and they're willing to rule against their alma mater or the people that are in their own county or the people that they have to deal with all the time. So the idea that venue matters a lot, I think that's a fallacy. I really do.
You know why I'm laughing at David McKenzie, Duke alum. Like, how many times have you been to Cameron and you see the judge and jury over there, Mike Krzyzewski, and whether it's conscious or subconscious, but that's basketball, right? That's not the Constitution. That's not the law of our land. I would like to dream with you on that one, but
that's exactly right. I mean, look, I need to disclose my biases. I have ACC allegiances coming out of my ears. Okay. I grew up in Clemson, South Carolina. My parents are professors there. I hold a degree from Duke. I'm sending a child to UNC Chapel Hill. I like the ACC.
You're surrounded. You're knee deep.
I'm knee deep. I don't think an allegiance to a school has anything to do with it. And I think that, if unfortunately, this again, I think is like finding hay in a haystack, and is a fairly straightforward issue that even if the trial court gets it wrong, which I don't think it will, we're talking about very experienced judges. Judge Bledsoe at the business court in Charlotte has been on the bench for probably 15, 20 years at this point. Judge Cooper in Leon County, Florida is a deeply experienced judge. I don't see any problem, any way that, given the simplicities of the issues, the fact that both Clemson and Florida State signed this thing, that both have profited from it, that during the term of the grant of rights agreement, neither one of them protested receiving the money or the terms that they were receiving. I mean, there's a lot of real problems to this. And so I think that the venue thing is a little bit of a red herring.
So I'm going to assume, as you said, that Florida State and Clemson, when they signed these contracts, had smart people and good lawyers. I'm also going to assume now that those two schools also have good lawyers. I'm going to put them at your level, and they're going to have an understanding that this is a shit legal argument. So if it is, why are they entering in this? And that's where I'm kind of curious, the motivations. Obviously, they're trying to get out. But if their argument is so specious legally, how does it help them, do you think, to get this lawsuit even into court? Because that, to me, alone, David, feels like a win for Clemson and Florida State.
Yeah, I've heard you and Ovia say that. And I think maybe you actually said that just yesterday, maybe it was the day before, but it smacks of desperation. I mean, look, this thing has been batted around and debated by the best attorneys, probably by all 15 schools in the ACC.
As they should.
Yeah. I mean, everybody in Winston-Salem for Wake up to Boston for Boston College have hired great intellectual property and litigation attorneys to look at this. And I think that the forbearance is really telling. The fact that we had pre-lawsuit rumors, I think dating back to February of 2023, of 7 ACC schools getting together and exploring ways to possibly get out of the grant of rights, and nothing happened until Florida State didn't make the playoffs, or nothing really happened meaningfully until the SEC happened to ink a much better deal. I think that tells you that every school, I mean, these are highly sophisticated, educated people. They're not going to not take this grant of rights agreement, take it to a good attorney, have them evaluate and say, hey, is there any way out of this? I think that if any of those 7 schools, could have gotten out of it in an intelligible way, quite frankly, they would have done so by now. And I think what you're seeing, especially in Florida State's lawsuit, which is dramatically worse than Clemson's. I mean, they filed a bad lawsuit in December, and then they filed one that was even worse in late January with the Swofford Raycom allegations, which I can get into. You're seeing them just reaching for straws, like they're throwing wet spaghetti on the wall to see if it will stick. So, good question. I don't know why they proceeded. Maybe I know that you think that getting it to court may sort of flex some muscle and sort of force maybe the ACC's hand on something.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't get that, because it sort of assumes that there's going to be a settlement down the road.
Right.
And why would there's a rule in litigation that you never settle when liability is clear and you have a solvent defendant. Both things are at play here. Florida State is certainly solvent, and liability, what they're doing is clear. So why would you settle? So I don't think it's a win getting to court. It's interesting. I've heard a lot of commentary out there that this is going to be dragged on for years. It's going to go up to appeals and everything else. And I just disagree. It's interesting. Both sides, less the ACC recently in their amended complaint in Charlotte, they're seeking what's called an action for declaratory relief. And presumptively, at least under North Carolina law, as well as in federal court, presumptively, those are supposed to be resolved quickly. And so the idea that this is going to stretch on for years, how much discovery do you need?
Right.
I would, the first person I would call if I was representing the ACC would be Eric Barron, the guy who originally signed the agreement, John Thrasher, and I may have that reversed, but John Thrasher, the one who signed the 2016 agreement, to say, is that your signature? And yes. And then the next question, did you receive money from the ACC under this agreement? Yes. It's not the most complicated fact pattern you're going to find.
David McKenzie, McKenzieLaw.net. You've been following this, writing about this, and I want to say in a way that even I understood. So I appreciate your clarity there in your writing and your explanation. Certainly a lot more complicated than my brain and Joe's can grasp at times. So appreciate you adding some insight. Follow him there. It's McKenzieLaw.net. You can also follow him on the Twitters. It's McKenzie Law on Twitter. So David, appreciate you taking some time. You got a prediction for the Sweet 16 for us?
I don't know. Let's remind the world, or the nation at least, that Triangle, North Carolina, we run college basketball. So go Pack, go Heels, go Devils, and hey, shout out to Clemson Tigers. Go Tigers.
That's right. Tigers are there too. Don't forget the Tigers. David McKenzie, McKenzieLaw.net. Appreciate you, man, for taking some time for us today.
Thanks, Joe.
The absolute second it got warmer here in the spring, I saw an ant on my deck, then in my kitchen. These ants, they find me. You know what you need to do? Contact Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority. It's bugsbite.com. Hayes Lancaster is the OG. He makes it real simple to protect your house. Go to bugsbite.com. Punch in your zip code. Hayes does not believe in contracts, but he does believe in saving you money. So do yourself a favor, go to bugsbite.com. You got ants in the house. You got mice in the attic, which might be in play as well. Termites. I got a nice termite stations set up outside the perimeter of my house. So all of the things, moisture under the house, all of the things, all the ways to protect your house from those critters. It's Mosquito Authority and Pest Authority. So check them out. It's bugsbite.com. I'm pumped up and full of energy this morning because I stopped at the Breeze Through over on Pool Road before I got downtown today. The dark roast coffee. I cannot stress this enough. You might think, oh, but it's not Starbucks. Oh, but it's not Dunkin' Donuts. No, it's better. The dark roast at Breeze Through, they've got you covered for all of your snacks, coffee, caffeinated drinks, energy drinks, you name all the drinks. They have it. The adult beverages, the beer cave over there on the home base there on Trinity and Edwards Mill. Breeze Through 17 locations throughout North Carolina. They have you covered wherever you go. I had someone reach out to me yesterday after they heard the ad for Home Field Apparel. Giulio, what do you know, state guy, about North Carolina merch? Well, here's what I know, and I'm going to show you today, because on Home Field Apparel, when I tell you they have the best Tar Heel merch, I'm not lying to you. They have this script Tar Heels. That's my favorite one. as you can see here, the blue with the Tar Heels across the chest, the 82 national championships. Vintage, the sweatshirts, the hoodies. Look at this Ram over here, the vintage UNC Ram. They have it all over at Home Field Apparel. So go check them out. It's homefieldapparel.com. If you use our code OG23, you'll receive a 15% discount on your initial purchase. So go and check them out. And yes, they have more than UNC stuff. I understand that. But I'm just being appreciative of the great UNC stuff that they have. Dean Dome, Hark the Sound. Again, you can see all these things if you're watching on the YouTubes. Do yourself a favor. Go over to homefieldapparel.com. Use that promo code OG23, and you can save 15% on your first order. All right, let's start today off with Luke DeCock from the News and Observer, columnist for the News and Observer. You can read his work at newsobserver.com, fresh from a trip from Pittsburgh in the regional rounds to see NC State take care of both Texas Tech and Oakland. Luke, how did Pittsburgh treat you?
Pittsburgh treated me very well. And I think we've talked about this on your show occasionally over the last couple of years. Pittsburgh is my number one future potential ACC tournament site. The hotels are all close to the arena. The arena is fantastic. The food is terrific. I ate like a king. And you can get drunk for $20. It's the perfect ACC tournament site. Everybody would be in the streets around the arena downtown, like all 8 teams, fans of all 8 teams were. We had Big Blue in town, and obviously a huge blow to the Pittsburgh economy when they lost. But yeah, Pittsburgh, I mean, I think that would be a terrific ACC tournament site if we're going to branch out from Greensboro and Charlotte and Brooklyn and DC, all of which, well, I'm not the biggest fan of Brooklyn outside the building just because I like playing the tournament someplace where you know it's happening and you're not on the subway looking at ads for the Big East tournament. But I think in Pittsburgh, you would know it was there. So, yeah, big Pittsburgh fan. Thought it's a great site for the first and second rounds. Would be a great regional site. Would be a great ACC tournament site. So I had a blast.
Yeah, I remember being there in 2015, and I was kind of blown away about how good of a setup it was for all of the reasons that you mentioned. NC State obviously has the mojo in both Pittsburgh and DC. I don't know about Dallas, sir. I'm not sure about that, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. You and I were sharing some thoughts about the same ideas. Yours was much more eloquent than mine from yesterday, though. You went fact or fiction in your column for yesterday in the News and Observer about the ACC success in the NCAA tournament and going over a lot of the same points I tried to make yesterday on the podcast. But again, much more eloquently and thoroughly than I did. So what was your main takeaway from how the ACC has kind of bucked conventional wisdom once again by sending 4 teams to the Sweet 16?
Yeah, all right, we'll get to that in a second. I want to start out by pushing back on something that you said yesterday as part of this discussion with Scott Wood about how the national media handles the ACC. I just want to make it clear to people that, yes, there are people in the national media, the Schefters, the Shams, the John Rothsteins, who are out here trading favorable coverage for information and, you know, so access journalism, we call it. I mean, it basically explains all political coverage is the reason no one in the national media will cover Trump is because the entire Trump team returns their calls. You know, we'll cover Trump critically. Trump actually has a really good relationship with the political media. That dynamic exists in sports, especially in pro sports with college assistant coaches, recruiting sites and football assistant coaches basically share a brain. You know, so there is that, but I feel the need to, in defense of my profession here, push back a hair because most legitimate journalists, most people who are out there in the trenches covering these teams, columnists, aren't doing things that way. And certainly, you know, the way I try to do it is people call me back or people give me information either out of respect because they respect the job I do, the time I put in, the effort I make to like understand things on the AD level. So they're not dumbing things down for me. You know, I can talk to Don Waddell at the sort of understanding the issues he faces as a general manager. And, you know, like when I was covering the Hurricanes, the players saw me there every day. They knew I was going through what I went through with them. So there was a level of respect there, or quite frankly, fear, you know, But yeah, I'm going to be like, if I learned one thing from Carlton Tudor, it was to be honest. It was to write honestly, write what you believe. Don't just make stuff up for clicks or whatever you would call it back then, but be honest, write what you believe. And so if you're scared that I'm going to write something that's going to be unfavorable to you, you may want me to hear your side. So you may call me back when I reach out.
Yeah.
You're going to want to put your spin on it. But the reality is I don't need you to do my job. Like, I covered the Hurricanes for 4 months in 2006, the best season they had to date, where Jim Rutherford refused to talk to me. And I broke the Doug Waite trade over his head online before the trade call. And Joe, you would be able to understand in 2006 to get a story online, not at 6 a.m. as part of the previous day's paper. You needed like 2 sets of nuclear codes and 2 dudes in some McClatchy silo somewhere in South Dakota, both turning their keys simultaneously to put a live story on the website. I don't need you to do my job. I hope you call me back because I've earned your respect, or you're scared of what I might write if you don't. But I don't care. And so I'm not out here. And look, I'm saying me, but there's a whole wing of this industry. We're not out here trading favorable coverage for access. Like, Roy Williams and Paul Maurice and I, we went around the bend. Like, we had it out. Okay, we've had it out. But in the end, those guys call me back because we have. And here's the other part of it: we built a relationship over the years.
Well, that's the key part of it, and I think that's where Jim Phillips is losing the plot.
Yeah, no, and
look, it doesn't have to be quid pro quo, but it does have to be a relationship. So,
the rest of that stuff you guys were right on. But and I know that's not what you were trying to say, but just sort of as a listener, that I was kind of could feel it veering off, and I want to bring it back to the center. The idea that we're all that we're not all out here pulling a Rothstein as like some sentient AI just retweeting the same shit every day and texting 8 million coaches. Like, the problem with the college basketball national media is there are very few people doing it well.
Right.
Like you didn't mention Matt Norlander. Matt Norlander does the best job of anybody in the college basketball national media of telling good stories, breaking news. Like, he does it all. And why? Because coaches respect him and ADs respect him, and they respect the job he does and the work he puts in. That's how you do it. Like, we've gotten lost in the journalism world. All these kids coming out of college want to be dropping Woj bombs, breaking draft picks 12 seconds before they happen. Like, that's just bullshit, man. That's not real stuff. Tell some stories, break some news, do some real things.
On the court itself. Yeah.
Anyway.
You're good. You're good. On the court itself, I think Carolina being a number 1 seed and advancing, not that big of a surprise.
Yeah.
State got some bracket luck. They had to fight and scrap and claw to get past Oakland. But ultimately, I don't think people were surprised by that. The other two I thought I think you and I were on the same page about Duke. Didn't love the way that they were playing heading into this tournament.
Sure.
I did think Vermont was a favorable draw, but I thought we saw their fastball against James Madison.
I think they heard the noise. Like, we talk about shutting out the noise and all that. I think they knew how many people thought James Madison was going to push them around and shoot over them. And I think that was a little bit of angry Duke. And we haven't seen angry Duke in a long time. We certainly didn't see it against Carolina. We didn't see it against State in the ACC tournament. That may have been the sort of disrespect that Duke needed to find its A game. Also, to quote a different Triangle coach, everything looks better when the ball goes in the basket. And if Jared McCain's going to hit 6 threes a half, Duke is going to be a very difficult team to beat. Also, it didn't hurt Duke that James Madison's best player got 2 fouls in the first 90 seconds. Like, things like that, they happen to Duke in the NCAA tournament. So that's kind of, you talk about bracket luck. There's sort of a Duke luck that seems to happen in March. If they don't lose in the first round, things tend to steamroll. But yeah, no, I think when you look at all 3 teams, I liked the way that Carolina handled the push they got from Michigan State. Michigan State did what they needed to do to win that game in the first half, first 2/3 of the first half of the first half. Michigan State came out and did what it had to do. Carolina had to find a response and certainly did late in the first half, and then sort of played their game in the second. So I think that's a good test for Carolina. And then State, I think that discussion's been exhausted a little bit at this point. The idea that States should be somehow downgraded for beating Oakland. I think the Oakland team that we saw in Pittsburgh that beat Kentucky and took NC State to overtime would have beaten Duke. Because again, when you've got a guy like Jack Golke dropping in bombs the way he was, and I'll tell you, he hit a couple from right in front of me as a Hillsdale grad from the right wing naturally. But he hit a couple from right in front of me where they've got a guy setting a screen, backing out like a butt screen, and he goes around that And Casey Morsell literally had to grab the guy to get around him. And then Golke's shooting off one leg off balance, and it's just going in all. I mean, like that, when you can't defend that, and you can't defend that, like Morsell can't go under that screen and he can't get up and around it. Like Golke's going to have a tight angle off balance shot if he wants to take it. And he was making them. So I don't downgrade that win at all. And obviously the other kid, Trey Townsend, whatever his name was terrific. I will take credit. Let's go back a week, calling the Ben Middlebrooks game, like that against Texas Tech. And, you know, if you want to talk, I to get into the ACC angle, to segue a little bit, like I want to know how Texas Tech was a 6 seed, because I look at a team with no inside presence, good perimeter defensive team that could shoot the ball okay. But, I mean, Texas Tech is like an 8th place team in the ACC. They look like Syracuse to me. Like there was no there with Texas Tech. So how does a team like that, A, win games in the Big 12, and B, come out with a 6 seed? Not a bad team, well coached, played hard, you know, aggressive on defense, played good D, but not a team to me I look at and say, oh, that's a top division team in the ACC. I mean, to me, that's an 8-15 team in the ACC, not a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. So there's some bracket luck there too. Like, hey, you want to talk about how the ACC potentially got screwed, which I think you and I are on the same page. 5 was about the right number. The fact that the Big 12 got overseeded and Texas Tech is a 6 instead of a 7 or an 8, which it probably should have been, actually played in NC State's favor.
Yeah, reading what you wrote in the News and Observer about the teams that got in, again, you did a much more thorough and articulate job of explaining what I was, and that is you don't need to be mad at the selection committee. That's not who to be mad at. The teams who didn't get in from the ACC and the Big East, by the way. Although
Absolutely.
I'm willing to listen to Seton Hall's claim if they did beat both Creighton and UConn. I know they did beat UConn. But the fact of the matter is you and I have talked about this, and I think it's an unwritten rule that I wish they would just put in writing. What was your record against the field? Because they obviously weigh it. There's just no way around it. Like Virginia got in because they beat Texas A&M and because they beat Florida. That's why they got in.
Right.
I mean,
I think what it comes down to is, and I did write this, the committee in the end, when it's getting down to these final few teams, they're going to look at, I think this is what the committee comes down to every year, except in 2019 with NC State. Did you have a good 1 or 2 good non-conference wins, which obviously Virginia did, and Clemson did, and Wake Forest and Pitt really didn't at the same level. And then did you have a couple big in-conference terms? Did you win at Duke? Did you win at Carolina, which Clemson did, right? Yeah. You know, and which Pitt did, but didn't have the non-conference part of it. So I think, you know, the solution for the ACC is still pretty simple, regardless of the discussion about the net or the Big 12 or any of this. You just have to win more games. And the ACC actually did a really good job this year of not losing terrible games, at least in that sort of top 7 to 8 teams. I mean, but, you know, like you look at Syracuse's schedule, they played good teams. They went to Maui. You know, they lost 2 games to really good teams in Maui. If Syracuse wins a couple games in the non-conference, they're a tournament team. You know, if they go, instead of playing Chaminade and they beat 2 teams in Maui, they're probably in the field. And so the margins here are very small. Yes. And the ACC needs to do a better job of working those margins. The answer is not to follow the Big 12 lead and play worse schedules, which I worry is the conclusion that they're going to take from this. The answer is to actually play harder schedules, win better games, and take all that rest of that crap out of the equation. Doesn't matter what your net is if you've got these good wins, because in the end, that's what the committee comes back and looks at.
Yeah, I would hope Carolina being rewarded as the number 1 overall seed, a number 1 seed, and avoiding UConn, the number 1 overall seed, which was Iowa State's fate because of their lousy non-conference schedule. I would think that would be the one where people are rewarding and understanding. I look at the one tweak I would like to see, and I get the quadrants are arbitrary and all this other stuff. I don't get too caught up in that because, again, I really feel like the secret formula is what did you do against the field? I would like to see the last 10 games be factored again. I know they got rid of them. I know they got rid of that as a metric, but Pitt in it, for example.
Yeah.
Particularly now, Luke, with these teams and the adjustment that you have to make in the first 6 weeks of the season when a lot of these non-conference games are played, it's almost like, you know, they're different teams. I mean, look at Pitt.
Yeah.
They're a completely different team by the end of the year.
I think that's what the committee misses. I agree. And look, the committee's been pretty clear. We're going to look at your body of work. We're going to look at all 30-something games. What the first game you play is equal to your conference championship game. We're looking at everything. And I think that's good. I think that's the way they should do it. My solution for quote unquote fixing selection. This is a whole nother podcast. I've sent Bubba Cunningham and I, who's going to be chairman of the committee next year. We have had many discussions about this because he's willing to listen and interested, in people's viewpoints. Now, hey, to my previous point, during the summer of 2020, Bubba and I were at a 180-degree angle on NIL. I thought his position on NIL was dead wrong. And we had a number of conversations about it. I was trying to get him to explain to me why he felt that way. He was trying to get me to make that's the kind of, when we talk about journalism, that's how the real sausage is made. The good sausage is made. They're having those kinds of conversations. Anyway, here's my solution. What we need is a resume rating. Strength of record does it. Wins above bubble does it. Takes margin of victory out of the equation. It says, how good are your wins compared to everyone else's? And we can look at that objectively, and it works. Like if you look at that, the field looks relatively similar. It helps the mid-majors a little bit, like James Madison and Indiana State. It reflects better on them because they had good wins. You take the committee out. Now, look, there's going to be a committee because it's the NCAA, and they got to have their little hands. But the committee still gets to do the bracket and seeding. And my suggestion was, and this is getting back to your point, if you still feel the need to scrub the seed list and all of that and tinker with it after the machine spits out whatever your at-large team should be, how about a delta? Like I was calling it net R for net resume rating. But how about a delta net R? Let's look at how your net R has changed over the course of the season last month. Teams with a good net delta R are going to be the teams that have gotten better over the course of the season. Why not look at that? So if you're comparing a Virginia and a Pitt, Virginia's goes downhill, Pitt's goes uphill. Maybe you take Pitt instead. So, I think there's other ways to do this. The other benefit of that, think about this. It's February. We're playing games. We're watching on the ticker during the late games, what used to be Pac-12 games and will now be terrible ACC games, the live bubble changing every day, who's in, who's out. And there's no Joe Lunardi. There is no human element here. They do this in college hockey, and it's great because everybody knows what the deal is. Everybody's on the same page. Going into the last day of the conference tournament, if teams A and B win, Team C is in the tournament. And if teams A and B lose, Team D is in the tournament. I think it was Western Michigan and Colorado College. On the last day of the season, they knew exactly what results had to happen for either one of them to get in. That's better, right? Now, it's college hockey, like no one in North Carolina cares. But imagine if you went into the last day of the ACC tournament knowing that if NC State beat Cal, Pitt was in, and if Cal in the ACC tailgame. If UNC beat State, Pitt was at whatever it is, then Indiana State was in. I don't know. It creates more. Anyway, to your point, one element I would suggest to that, if the committee does feel the need to tinker, is to look at the rate of change of that rating over a specific period of time and get a sense of who's playing well at the end. Problem with the last 10 games is it doesn't account for competition. So if you play like Virginia's ACC schedule and you play Syracuse twice and Notre Dame twice and whoever in the last 10 games, and you're 8-2 in your last 10 games, and someone like NC State plays Duke, Florida State, Pitt, and Carolina and goes 6-4, State gets docked for losing to 4 good teams and vice versa. So you have to do it in a way that equalizes for quality of competition, but I'm not opposed to that. And I think it makes sense.
All right, let's do one more basketball question. We'll pay some bills and then we'll come back and we'll do some hockey. This is the 5th time that all 3 Triangle teams have made the Sweet 16. The previous 4 years, at least one has gone to the Final Four, and in the last 2 times, the national champion has come from the Triangle. Will that trend continue? Will the Triangle get a team in the Final Four this year, do you think?
Final Four, yes. Because I think I don't think the probabilities are, one, just like Carolina plays either Kansas or Kentucky every year in the NCAA tournament, CBS is going to get its Caleb Love game. So I think that's a coin flip. So let's call that a 50% chance out west. I think Carolina and Arizona will get to that game. I think they'll play, and I think that's a coin flip game. In doing all my brackets and whatnot, I picked Arizona because I think the time zone advantage probably does matter. I also really liked what I saw from Arizona at Duke early in the year. Also, it's Caleb Love against Carolina. Like literally anything could happen.
Yeah.
0 for 31, 15 threes. Like, my God, like the box of possibilities is endless. And then on the other side in Dallas, I mean, I think having two teams there, as good as Houston is and as good as Marquette is, there's probably a 25% chance, 20% chance one of those two teams comes out of that regional. So I think that there's a better than 3/4. Like this is a pretty good shot. Most likely Carolina, but I wouldn't rule out Dallas. And hey, are we looking again at the apocalypse? Could we have a second Final Four meeting for a national title this time of Duke and Carolina? It's not off the table. I don't think it's likely, but it's out there. It's like hovering in the distance, like the ships from V. Like it could happen. We could have an Independence Day and the White House gets blown up and Will Smith is flying around. I haven't fully recovered from 2022, so I'm the wrong guy to ask. But yeah, I do think that holds up. I don't know that we'll get another national champion, but I'm pretty sure some combination of circumstances happens where we end up with a team in the Final Four. I think that's most likely to be Carolina, but Duke could shoot its way past Houston. State locks down Tyler Kolek, like we get like the game from Jaden Taylor on Tyler Kolek and take Marquette out of their offense. And next thing you know, it's State and Duke playing for a trip to Phoenix. So, I think it's possible, maybe even probable.
All right, let's talk. Let me sell some ice cream and some other things, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some hockey because, as we love to say, it feels like 83, feels like 87, feels like whatever. Whoa, starting to feel like 06 for the Carolina Hurricanes. We'll be right back. If you're in Raleigh, we have the Lake Boone Shopping Center on lockdown. Here's what you do. We have a double play for you. Hit up the Butcher's Market right there. New location in Lake Boone Shopping Center. Get yourself some signature steak tips. Yesterday I went over, I got the signature chicken breast. It's so good. You will not be disappointed. I promise you. Get some, put it on the grill. The maple bourbon chicken as well. Also delicious. All of their meats, all of their prepared foods. You cannot go wrong. My cousin Nick is in town. He had the vegetable medley yesterday. He was like, "How did you make this?" I said, "It's the Butcher's Market." He goes, "Vegetables from the Butcher's Market?" I said, "Yes, and they're delicious." So check them out. It's thebutchersmarkets.com. Again, we have Lake Boone on lockdown. So step number 1 of this double play, you go to the Butcher's Market, you get yourself some prepared meats, you get yourself some all the food and all the things that you need, and then you go across the street to the Two Roosters. Ice cream? Yes, sir. There's an official ice cream of the OG. It's Two Roosters, tworoosters.com. They have locations, 5 locations, but Lake Boone, that's our spot. Okay. The bourbon coffee, you've heard me talk about it. It's delicious. All right. I get stuck on one flavor, but you don't have to. That's the beauty of Two Roosters. You can get whatever you want. Cinnamon donut. I mean, they have some other ones that are really just kind of off the charts. It's up to you. You make the choices. Maybe you're over at PNC Arena. Even better. PNC Arena, Two Roosters on the main concourse there. You're going to see a line. Okay. And I get it. We don't all like lines, but there's a reason there's a line. The ice cream is unbelievable. It's totally worth your time. You can get the Stormy Tracks, where it's a little bit of a combination of everything. That's the number 1 seller in the arena itself. They have the hockey helmets too. You get the sundae in the hockey helmet. They have great ice cream, great choices, a lot of variety. So check them out. It's tworoosters.com. All right, I was over at PNC Arena on Sunday. The Hurricanes taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs and winning the game 2-1. And okay, let me start with this with the Canes, Luke, before we get into how good they look and how they're playing and how all of the parts seem to be coming together after their trade deadline moves. What kind of PTSD does Freddie Anderson have from the Toronto media? This was my first interaction with him after the game. And I'm looking at this guy, and he was on a Tom Barrasso level. You were the only Tom Barrasso whisperer on the planet. I mean, he was on a Tom Barrasso surliness after a win, and I'm just kind of like, this guy has some media scars from his time in Toronto, and I don't know the whole story there, obviously, but he was like, I have zero time for this. I shouldn't say as surly as Tommy the Bee could be. It was more of like, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. I'm not answering. I don't care. Hurry up. Can we get out of here? Like, it was.
No, there's no question he's got some scars. My sense is, and I haven't talked to him specifically about the Toronto experience. My sense is there's two things. One, he doesn't like doing scrums.
Okay.
Period. My experience with Freddie is, and I talked to him, I think it was last year at one point, when he was hurt, he was coming back. And like, let's be honest, it takes Freddie a long time to come back. Like, there's a lot of sort of whispering behind the scenes, like, well, Freddie's been practicing for 2 months, so he's got to play at some point. So I asked him, like, how do you know when you're ready? Like, what's your deal? What's your process? Blah, blah, blah. And I stood his locker for 20 minutes and he gave me thoughtful answers, and they were open, and he understood that people don't always understand, but he has a process and he knows when he feels right, and blah, blah, blah. And I wrote that column and whatever. And I just think he doesn't like the scrums. I think he does feel like he was scapegoated in Toronto, that he didn't get a fair shake there. I think that's entirely possible. The Toronto media, I mean, I have many good friends who work in it, but collectively, the mob Toronto media it does eat their young. I mean, they go after anyone and everyone, and they do it in a big group, and there's no oxygen. For a goalie, especially one who's sort of introverted like Freddie is, he's a quiet guy.
Yeah.
That's not his environment. Like, he's not going to stand up there and like fight back and defend himself. He's going to kind of retreat into a shell. And I think you see that even now, like on a normal night, not against Toronto, he's not always the greatest talker when there's a bunch of TV cameras in his face. But I've always found that if you talk to him at a pregame skate or on a practice day and there's nobody else around, you act like he's got a younger brother who plays goal in Denmark. And, they're so many years apart that they're, like he had some interesting things to say about that relationship. Or I did a story last year about all the guys in the locker room who don't speak English and kind of how they communicate. And Freddie was really good on that, about how his English, like, I think he's a really thoughtful, smart guy who just doesn't like to talk to scrums. And some of that, I think, is his Toronto experience. Some of that, I think, is just his nature. I just don't think he's the kind of guy who'd like to stand up and give a speech. But if you want to sit down with him over a cup of coffee, he'll tell you some good stories. That's sort of been my experience with Freddie Anderson. You kind of got to meet him at his level.
Yeah. I said that more of as an observation than a criticism. It was just kind of startling. Like, they just,
I get it. But I think
looking at it and I'm going, wow, this guy really has some. What he doesn't have, though, is a loss. Since coming back, the Hurricanes are 9-1-1. They've won all 6 of his starts. You and I can lord over Ovius forever about the beginning of this season and what the Hurricanes' problems were. Yes, it was the goaltending. There's just it just seems to me, Luke, going over there and seeing the games in person, like, there just seems to be a very calm nature about the Hurricanes when Freddie's back there. Like, oh, okay, yeah, Freddie's got it. But here's the adult in the room. Kachekov can be fiery, can be volatile. It can be both ways, right? But I feel like with Freddie, it's like, okay, there he is. There's the kindergarten teacher just calming the room down.
Well, yeah,
being, ready.
You see that dynamic a lot, though. Like, that's the way the team played in front of Curtis McElhinney.
Yes, the Wolf. Yes,
they just felt comfortable with him. Whereas when you have a guy, whether it's a struggling Antti Ranta, who the guys love, yes, but when it's hard when a guy's struggling, or the entire Scott Darling experiment. When you don't trust the guy in net, you play completely differently. And I think we saw a little of that in December when they were really struggling. You go to like the Edmonton game, like that was totally out of character, but they totally lost confidence that if we gave up any chance at all, it was going to end up in our net. And that was what was happening. Like, could not get a save. And Freddie, even when he struggles, and if he gives up a bad goal, just doesn't give up many. You just know that if you screw up, he's probably going to bail you out. And if you don't screw up and you give up a tough chance, it's probably not going in. So yes, I think there is a security blanket factor there with Freddie. And I think that's actually affected the way they've played in front of Kachekov since Freddie came back. Because the crazy Russian puck dodger, is, I think, probably pretty hard to play in front of because you don't know exactly what he's going to do, whether it's a poke check or kicking a guy or whatever comes into his frame of consciousness at whatever given time. He's a wild card. He's a loose cannon back there, and that can be good sometimes. But I think for this team, the way it plays, the aggression it tries to play with, the speed it tries to play with, they do a little better with that calming presence in net, and that's what Freddie brings. And look, does Freddie need to play back-to-back games at some point? Absolutely. My feeling is you've got a month, you've got 4 weeks until the playoffs start. Whatever Rod Brindamore and Don Waddell and Paul Schoenfelder and Freddie Anderson think Freddie needs to do over the next 4 weeks to be ready on that night, do it. If that means he plays once the rest of the way, fine. Whatever they think he needs to be ready at that particular moment. Because if this team wins the Stanley Cup, it's going to be with Freddie Anderson in net for the most part. That's its best chance. And, whatever, like maybe taking a couple months off in the middle of the season is the best possible thing for him.
Maybe Tom Brady suspension helping out. On the scoring side, is Jake Gensel the missing piece here? 8 games, Luke, 2 goals, 10 assists. He's plus 11 in those. I forget where you fall on the plus minus spectrum. I think it's a fairly decent one, especially when you're involved as he has been. It just seems like between him and Kuznetsov, you get that 06 signal. Okay, we're going for it, but then there's a signal and then there's actual production. I feel like Gensel is providing a little bit of both.
Here, I'm gonna push back here. 2 goals in 11 games. What's this guy doing? Or in 8 games? They brought this guy in to score goals. Jake Gensel has to score goals right now, or this trade is going to be a failure. Are we ready? Are we ready for television?
Yeah, that's our.
I want to know, Jake Gensel, where are the goals? I want to know. Wow. Show me the goals, Jake Gensel.
That's our weekly Canes like Toronto. That's our other segment that's coming during the playoffs.
Coming.
The OG
if we were in Toronto.
Like Toronto, yeah.
I'm ready. No, I think totally. Like, one, yes, they fit really well. And that's one of the reasons why they identified Jake Gensel, because he did fit the way they played. And they knew he could step in and play with Sebastian Aho or play with whoever, because it was going to fit the style this team plays. Kuznetsov was a much bigger risk just because of his personal issues and because he hasn't played very well for 2 years. But obviously, this is a guy who a change of scenery could absolutely benefit. Being around different people, hearing different voices, being around people that know him and trust him, like Justin Williams. I think there's a much bigger roll of the dice, but the early returns are good. So from a strictly on the ice and in the room hockey perspective, these 2 guys have been a great fit. The jump from Jake Gensel to Michael Bunting, and I do think Michael Bunting would have helped this team in the playoffs because he's got that little bit of Snydery in him that this team lacks. But that jump is noticeable because he's faster and he moves the puck quicker, and he's picked up the defensive scheme, which is reflected in that plus minus. And I'm not a huge fan, but I do think that shows something. He's helped the power play, so it's done everything that you would want that trade to do in the whatever it is 2.5 weeks since it happened, except score goals. When is Jake Gensel going to start? This is ridiculous. This guy's getting paid. So the flip side of it is, and look, my conversation with Tom Dundon's online now. I talked to him last night. The guys wanted him to do something. They wanted this. They wanted a signal from Dundon, from Don Waddell, that they were all in. That and look, it wasn't. I wrote this. It's true. The reality is the Gensel deal is a deal because of what they had to give up, which wasn't a ton. It was very similar to the Doug Weight trade in 2006, is a deal they would have done in years past if it had presented itself. So the idea that they did something they wouldn't normally have done is not necessarily 100% accurate, although it's mostly accurate. But there's no question that the players wanted something like this. And now that it's been done, they're responding. It's like a B12 shot. It's like the good mango. You get going, and all of a sudden, now it's like, all right. And you're right. In 2006, the Doug Weight trade sent a message to a team that had gotten off to a good first half. Nobody was still giving it any credit. It was like a jumper cables attached to the nipples. You are for real. We're giving you the guy you need. And then at the trade deadline, Eric Cole goes down. Mark Recchi comes in. We are in this to win this. This trade does have that same kind of feel. The eerie thing about it, and you would remember this, the Doug Weight trade, they gave up a late first-round draft pick, an NHL player they didn't need, and a couple prospects deep in their pool. And the Jake Gensel trade, they gave up a late draft pick, either late first or early second, an NHL player that they were upgrading with Gensel, and two prospects that were from a deep prospect pool. They didn't shave off the top. They came from the middle of it, although they do think Ville Koivunen's going to be a really good player. But they can afford to give him up because they have other guys coming along, whether it's Bradley Nadeau or Jackson Blake or whoever. So a lot of similarities there mentally to what those trades meant to those teams. In 2006, it was, we believe that you can do this. In 2024, whatever year it is, this is the year. Now is the time. Let's put our foot on the gas and go. And that's what's happened since the trade deadline.
Luke DeCock, you can read all his work at newsobserver.com. Enjoy the Sweet 16. Enjoy the Final Four, and we will see you over at PNC for the hockey playoffs.
Yeah, we actually get a week off between this year, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to need it.
Excellent. Appreciate you, Luke.
See you, bud. Yep.
It's my favorite segment of the OG. It's the OG Gambling Syndicate. And after winning yesterday in the NCAA women's tournament, we had NC State halftime, full-time. Halftime was much easier than the full-time bet from the Wolfpack women, but they are moving on to the Sweet 16 after beating Tennessee and also after cashing our ticket for us. So appreciate NC State for doing that. So let's go back to the NIT today for our play of the day, our DraftKings play of the day. We have partnered with DraftKings. They are the official gambling partner of the OG. And if you use our promo code OG24, you can get up to $250 in bonus bets. That's right. Use that promo code OG24 and you can get $250 in bonus bets. All right. So today's play of the day, let's go to the NIT. We are past the phase of the NIT where does this team care? Are they interested in playing? And we're now down to, is this team good? Indiana State is good. I'm not saying they belonged in the NCAA tournament, but I do see a world where they could have been in the NCAA tournament and could have won 2 games and been in the Sweet 16. The Sycamores are -3.5 tonight against Cincinnati, West Miller and Cincinnati. I like Indiana State -3.5 full game today. So it could be Indiana State -3.5 in our play of the day, our DraftKings play of the day. The wait is over. DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of NASCAR, is now live in North Carolina. Now you can legally bet on all of your favorite sports anytime, anywhere, right here in North Carolina with DraftKings. For a limited time, new customers who sign up with the promo code OG24 and bet $5 will receive $250 instantly in bonus bets. DraftKings has the best features, including same-game parlays, player props, and more with fast and easy payouts right at your fingertips. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now using the code OG24. You bet $5 to get $250 instantly in bonus bets only on DraftKings Sportsbook with the code OG24. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 877-718-5543 or visit morethanagame.nc.gov. 21 plus, North Carolina only. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. Deposit and eligibility restrictions apply. Terms at DraftKings.com/sportsbook/NC. NASCAR is not a sponsor of this promotion and is used under license.
What's up next? What's up next?
Do you like saving money? Of course you do. Save money on your home insurance. Save money on your car insurance. Call Matt Davis and Garner. 919-779-8277. Matt Davis at State Farm. It's insuregarner.com. But if you want to have a conversation about how to save money, one of our listeners, Troy, saved more than 40%. Okay? The best thing to do is have a conversation and realize what you can do. So 919-779-8277. It's Matt Davis at State Farm and Garner. Insuregarner.com. He can handle all of your insurance needs. Staying in Garner, hometown realty. Listen, if you're looking to sell your house, you might think, I can do this. I don't need the help of a realtor. I don't want to pay the 3% to someone to help me. Oh, really? You want to cost yourself money? Because the best way to do that is try to do it on your own. Use the experts. Go to Hometown Realty. It's myhtr.com. 6 locations from here to the coast. They have the home base here, Clayton, Garner. All right. But it's myhtr.com, 6 locations here to the coast, more than 250 agents. You see all of the new construction. You want to get in, you need their help. You want to get out, you want to sell, you need their help. Maximize your profit with your number one investment. That's your home. That's Hometown Realty. It's myhtr.com. And you know me, I've been known to get a stray traffic violation or two. I've been known to need the legal services of Whitaker Hamer. You can too. Go to wh.lawyer. Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer. They're in Garner. They have other locations too. They can handle all of your different needs. Family law, any kind of traffic law, contract law, closing on a house. If you're selling a business, best thing to do, reach out on wh.lawyer. And don't forget, we're going to be at Shady's on Friday, May 3rd to celebrate the first birthday of the OG. Josh owns Shady's in downtown Garner. You should check him out on any other occasion, but check him out Friday, May 3rd. We will be there for the OG birthday party. We appreciate Josh and Joe for supporting the program in the way that they do. And I hope that you guys, when you have legal needs, can use Whitaker and Hamer. Again, it's wh.lawyer. Hey, baby, I hear the podcast calling. It's Wolfpack and Demon Dukes. They're calling again. I can't help it, man. Every time I hear the song, I hear Frasier. I hear him singing in my head. So let's get out of here on some Hey Joe questions. Hey Joe, today we will go into the YouTube comments. And, I need obvious for such things. I saw one yesterday, like, do you have to swear to make your point? And my first initial smart ass thought was like, ooh, that's big Bill Cosby energy. I thought we were past all of that. But my second more rational explanation was, that's my tell. You can tell when I'm kind of heated and when I'm fired up about something. It's also like the Jersey in me, but that's my tell. Like when I start cursing, that's how you know I'm feeling something and I'm feeling some kind of way. So you're right. I could probably clean some of that up, but when I get going, it is hard for me to kind of put a governor on my own language. So let's go to the YouTube comments. These are from yesterday's show. We talked to Ross Martin a little bit about Carolina and Caleb Love, the collision course in the West Regional. From Dr. J 27. We want Caleb Love to score 30 and Arizona lose by more than 1, and all is well. I could hear that. From Brent Tuttle, committee needs a refresher on conference head-to-head in the eye test. ACC played SEC even during the regular season. ACC had a winning record against the Big 12, but those two conferences got 8 teams and the ACC got 5. Is this part of the big picture body of work? Yes and no, Brent. Head-to-head obviously is considered, but not conference by conference. I know people have a hard time with this process. You're looking at a team based on their resume, not based on their conference. Yes, the teams they play in their conference are part of their resume, but ultimately it's not considered what their conference record is. From Curtis Driver, I've heard this one before. Jim Phillips, PhD, absentee ACC commissioner, just collecting paychecks and waiting for the conference to die so he can go back to the Big Ten and get some cushy job. The thought that Jim Phillips is a plant from the Big Ten has been advanced before. All right, let's do 2 more. Media is biased from Ann Morrow, 68. Yes, media is biased. We do need better PR. And seriously, each week a new prediction of who is going to make the tournament from someone who has no vote in the selection is not helpful. I agree. And then Baden Border 87, Gilio is one of the worst takes in illogical analogies I've ever heard in the basketball world this year. He goes on, there's a little bit more. Listen, the analogy was if you got a bunch of B's, you might perform and get an A on the test. But as the teacher, I can't predict that you're suddenly going to do better on the test. That's not an illogical analogy. It's actually quite a thoughtful one, if you ask me. Michael Crane, 2614, blame ACC commissioner. He's too busy unpacking from move to Charlotte instead of marketing ACC teams other than UNC and Duke. I'd argue he's not even marketing UNC and Duke. So there's some different ways to look at that as well. And then, yes, state one fan for life. Joe, it's pretty simple. Jim Phillips is a Big Ten plant. to to take down the ACC from within. I'm laughing because the idea, yes, has been advanced. That's going to do it for today, though. We will be back tomorrow. I have a nice conversation with Eric Kramer, former Wolfpack great and now a mental health advocate. Eric's going to be in town next week for the NC State spring game, so it could be good to catch up with him. And we'll have more conversations about the NCAA tournament, of course, and we'll see how the Canes do tonight in Pittsburgh. Appreciate everyone for checking in. Like, subscribe, all those good things that we need to do. Appreciate you. Check those links too if you want to support the OG. It's tax season. You can support us and help us out in any little way that helps us. We appreciate it. See you guys tomorrow right here on the OG.